everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Coco Chats with me, your host, Marian Dozier of CocoWire.net, the website that provides news, events, and useful information to communities of color in Palm Beach County. That's CocoWire.net if you want to know what's happening here with us in Palm Beach County. And as we do on this show and on CocoWire.net, we will continue to tell the stories of our communities, of the African diaspora, which, as you are aware, I'm sure, are African Americans, Caribbean blacks, and Native Africans, so that we all get a better sense of how rich and interesting our communities are. Especially today, which is National Veterans Day. Today, we recognize those who've served our country in the U.S. Armed Forces, some of whom even fought in wars. We thank them for their service. Today's guest also did service. Robert Edwards served 8 years in prison for 2 robberies committed with a gun and 2 friends in 2008. He was just 17 years old. He would serve nearly a decade in a state prison and was released in 2018. But that crime happened nearly a decade after a crime that happened to him when he was just 9 years old. In middle school now, ladies and gentlemen, imagine this. His maternal aunt and her husband were going through a really unhappy divorce. She told her sister, who was Mr. Edwards' mother, to come over, let's talk, bring the kids. He, his 2 siblings, and his mother were visiting his aunt and her children, his cousins, when her husband came and tried to kill everyone in the house. He did shoot his wife, but he killed his sister, her sister, who was Mr. Edwards' mother, and his 16-year-old sister. The man killed himself as well. His nephew-in-law, age 9, on the other hand, had run from the house with his 2 siblings and sought help from neighbors. That nephew-in-law was Mr. Edwards. And that, ladies and gentlemen, for just a second is what's called a childhood traumatic experience, which, those CTEs can make you as crazy. As you get older, crazy. And is that what happened in Robert Edwards' case, who came to kill and go to prison at just the age of 17? Who knows? But what we do know is once he was released a decade later, he was a different person. Shortly after that release in 2018, he became connected with a man he knew who lives in Broward County, a man he calls brother, who himself served 19 years and who introduced Mr. Edwards to the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. Mr. Edwards will vote for the first time in his life in this year's general election. Now, the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, we've mentioned before, but it's based in Orlando, and it's a hard-working, grassroots-based, member-focused nonprofit that is run by returning citizens who were dedicated to ending the disenfranchisement and discrimination against people with convictions. In other words, against ex-felons. So when Amendment 4 to the state constitution passed with more than 70% of the vote in 2018, there were 1.7 million ex-felons in the state who would become eligible to vote. Most were white, by the way. But within a year of the amendment's passage, the state legislature passed a law that took away the right to vote from those who owned fines or court costs. That's why it came to be known as a poll tax. Then organizations like the League of Women Voters and the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund pushed back in federal and state courts, and those cases continue. But the work that Mr. Edwards did for the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition primarily was to seek to register as many ex-felons as possible in Palm Beach County. And they did such a good job, he says, that the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition they're considering opening a Palm Beach County-based office. How well did they do? Well, we'll hear more from him about that later, but they did register more ex-felons to vote in Palm Beach County than anywhere else in South Florida. And he's going to go back to work with them in January. And if they don't open a chapter here in Palm Beach County, he'll go to work at their Fort Pierce branch office full-time, working to make change. So Robert Edwards, Achieving ex-felon.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Coco Chats.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. It's a
Now,
pleasure.
yes, and you have been through a lot,
Yes,
even though you're only 31 years old.
yes, ma'am.
So give us a sense of what your life has been like as you look over, over all, these years. I mean,
Yes.
is there? Can you touch something and let us know
Yes.
what it's been like?
A beautiful struggle. That's how I describe it. I feel like everything in life happens for a reason. It's divine, and sometimes it's above your understanding, depending on where you at in life. And sometimes at that particular spot, it's not meant for you to understand until you get to the next spot. So everything you stepping on is a stepping stone. So that's how I take it, and that's how I look. Everything is just is beautiful, and in the midst, inside the chaos and what's going on, I look at everything as just it's meant to happen in a certain way. So I just take it in stride and I look for it.
All right, and so when you look back at what you did,
Yes, ma'am.
though all those years ago, I mean, what do you see? I mean, why did you commit robbery with a gun? I mean, you weren't poor.
No, ma'am. I feel like it's more of a mental state, and I love having conversations like this. Once you normalize a certain behavior, people unconsciously take it, and subconsciously, it crosses over to the conscious, and you will see them exude the same behavior. Growing up, I was very smart. I loved to read. I was a
Yeah,
very
and
avid
it's
reader.
interesting. Even the bio that you sent me was very well written.
Yeah. Oh,
it really
thank
was.
You, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm humble. And certain behavior, even though I seen it, it wasn't something that was acceptable to me until after my mom and sister were murdered, and I moved back down to West Palm. It's like the nucleus of friends I had. All they did was exude that same type of behavior. So it went from watching cartoons, reading, going to the beach and the library to using drugs, selling drugs, picking up guns, people getting hurt, and violence because it was like your nucleus, your environment was literally surrounded in this, and you ain't have enough. I should say you ain't know. It was like you ain't have enough confidence in yourself to actually be who you were amongst the chaos. So it affected me.
And so tell us how that crime affected you when you were at age 9. And I did not
Yes, ma'am.
anticipate that this had happened to you.
Yes, ma'am.
But when I read a story about it, and
Yes.
it just sounded horrible.
Yeah.
But give us a sense of how that how that affected you when you were age 9. How it affected you at age 17. I mean,
Growing up, I was very every. There's sometimes you having I call it the point of derailment. Every problem has an origin, and if you study the circumstances of origin, then you can see why the problem is in a continuation state, and it's still relevant to today. And when my mom and sister was murdered, that literally set me on the path of derailment. And I remember because nobody could explain why that happened, and I grew up in like a strong I guess Christian-based households, like a majority of our people.
Of our people, yeah.
And they couldn't explain it. And I felt like these are the same people that I look up to and have so much love and I aspire to be, but yet they couldn't explain this same simple situation that left me devastated. It was no right or wrong answer to it. And the answer they gave me, it was wrong. I couldn't take that. I couldn't take the fact that bad things happen to good people. And so I used to be extremely extroverted. Like I got a persona about myself, and I withdrew. So I became an introverted. I stopped talking for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I stopped talking for 2 years.
I cannot imagine what that was like though, to see your mother and your sister
It was
murdered
honestly,
by somebody that
yes,
you know.
yes. Honestly, it was, to this day I still think about that, and it's like on my mind. When I seen it for a long time, I felt like a coward because I had to leave my mom and my sister in order to live. Like it was,
wow, yeah.
And I had to deal with that a lot. And as I got over it, it affected me, and I felt like due to the simple fact that the situation occurred and we didn't understand the whole circumstances of it. You know, two people lost their life, and the third person, my cousin dad, he lost his life. It was unfortunate for all the parties involved, but like
But what affected you the most?
what affected me is, I would say, the not understanding. For so long, I couldn't grasp why this happened. And I remember in one key moment, when I was coming out my cousin's room, he met me upstairs. And once he met me upstairs, after I seen him shoot my mom, he pointed the gun at me. And when I looked in his face, he had like, his face was like distorted. He was like engulfed in hatred, but it was hurting him. He was crying. So I didn't know how he was doing, and when he pulled the trigger, the gun jammed. And my auntie came out the bathroom, knocked the gun in the bathroom, and now it all hell ensues, and we fighting for the weapon to try to get it. My brother, me, the guy that's doing it, my auntie, he threw my brother off the second floor. All hell, but it was something happened to me that night. And while I was there, when I ran downstairs and him and my auntie was fighting, because I felt like when I tried to get the weapon, when I tried to get the gun out the bathroom, he was kneeling against me against the door frame. So we upstairs, and a survival thing kicked in. So I realized I couldn't go for it no more because his knee was against my ribs. He had me jammed against the door frame, but I could back up. So I backed up and I ran downstairs, and my auntie and him fighting for the gun. You know, she taking a very hurtful beating. And I seen my mom. That was the first time I seen somebody shot. And she was still alive. She was still talking. And she was bleeding out her nose. And I learned about internal organs.
Where did he shoot her?
Right in the head.
Oh, my God.
In the top of the head. And she was talking, but her eyes was rolled back. And she was bleeding out her nose because her body's trying to survive. It's trying to, like, keep you alive as long as you can. And I looked up and I seen it in the kitchen. I seen a deck of knives in the kitchen. So my mind was like, I'm about to go and help my auntie. But it was something in my mind, like it was a still voice that just told me, run. And I listened to it, because if I didn't, I would have been dead. So,
age 9.
Yeah, I got up and I ran. And when I ran outside. I seen my sister. She was bleeding out her head. Like, it was so much blood. I just jumped over her body. I didn't even stop, and I ran. And it was just, that was on my mind. The only thing was in my mind is I gotta survive to make sure everybody else in the house straight.
But you know, that's interesting to me. Now, that happened to you. You saw, you know, your family members, you know, get shot with a gun.
Yes, ma'am.
And then some years later, you would commit a crime
that's
with guns.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, and you had never done anything like that before.
No.
So, what happened to you as a little young boy?
Directly affected.
It did.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what turned you into a crazy man when you were 17.
Yes, safe to
Well,
say.
before you were 17.
Yeah, it's safe to say. It's safe to say.
Wow. So, but how did you come to get involved with the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition?
Okay. As we know, I ended up getting incarcerated.
Right.
And while I was in prison, you have two choices. You have a choice to educate yourself, or you have a choice just to stay where you ever at in life and just, complain about everything. And I decided to better myself from the first day I got in there. Ever since the judge hit the gavel, I decided to make the best of this all the way through. And when I got into
I cannot imagine deciding that, because it seems like you would just be like,
just whatever.
Yeah.
The reason being because growing up, I have a lot of tattoos, but I lost 9 friends. And I tattooed all of them on me because I wanted to keep a reminder to myself why I'm here and where I did not here no more. And at some point, you are in control of your life, and you have to take control of your life, and you can't blame no outside circumstances or no past circumstances for where you at in life. And I just made that decision early, and it kept me alive. And while I was incarcerated, I realized so much injustice and the off-kilter energy that's been put in. Like, you have 50, 60-year-old grown man that's illiterate in there. And, some educational program that's easily provided out there in society is not in there. So these same guys that has all this time, they can't even read their law work to get their time back. And it's set up like that. So, That's what literally led. That's what ignited that passion for my people and to get out and to have a voice for the voiceless. Cause it's so many of my brothers. They never getting out. So they count on me every day.
And you did refer to yourself as that in your bio.
Yes.
As a voice of the voiceless.
Yes, ma'am.
And instead of while you were in prison, I mean, you could have, as you said, you can educate yourself, or you can, continue to be a loser.
Yes, ma'am.
Why do you think you made that stronger choice, though?
I'm real passionate about my people, melanated people all across the diaspora, not just us over here in America. But I started studying the greatness and accomplishments of what we had as a whole and what we contributed to this planet since we've been here.
Mm-hmm.
And our history span eons. It's long. And
it's a rich history, too.
Yes, ma'am. And over time, I began to realize the condition that our people were placed in and how we were cut off from certain parts of this history. And this what led to, I would say, the depreciation of us as melanated people. And so I committed myself to it. And since I was a living example of me going to the penal system, I had to become a hero for those people.
So was voting important to you growing up?
No, not at all. That's ironic.
Really?
No. What's I'm not gonna say it's saddening, but it's reality. That's not spoken a lot about in our households. And this is why I would say with the socially, something that's so accepted as a socially norm, it becomes cool, it becomes popular, it becomes something that's easily done. No one in my household talked about voting. And and it could span back to what they were educated in, but at some point, like I said previous, you have to make a decision for yourself and what you want to see out of this life. And it was never a factor to me. And when I actually got out and had the chance to, I was a little reluctant, because I still have my precepts and my perceptions and my personal opinions how I feel about voting. But then I thought about all the brothers that's never getting out, and they don't even have the voice to vote. And here I am gonna sit there and just throw that away all because of my personal opinion about that. So I felt real selfish. So I got up and I did it. I ain't had no choice to.
Wow. And so now, you worked with that coalition to register as many ex-felons in Palm Beach County as you could.
Yes, ma'am.
How many would you say you registered?
Personally, it's over 1,000. I can honestly, just me, and I had a team because I moved up so well, and I'm very good with people. So especially our people. So I excel so fast that I went from a canvasser to a field organizer in like 3 days.
Wow.
And then I got a team of sometimes 8, 9, 15 people. That's
and
canvassers.
the team was all ex-felons.
Yes,
wow.
Majority of them, yes, ma'am. And I'm we going out in the field and we showing to our community that how important it is to vote. And it was like, it was a struggle. They was putting up a fight. You encounter all type of people, but we got the job done at the end of the day.
So did y'all seek to register anyone else other than ex-felons?
Oh yes, ma'am. We register a lot of people that's just they not returning citizens at all. But like I said again, it's voting and being the system seems like it's viewed in a certain manner from our people. So a lot of our people feel like we don't need to vote or we don't need to do this and we don't need to do that, but yet we'll complain about this. I done heard that too many times, so many times, but yet we'll complain about the same conditions. And it's so much levels to just voting. That could that's actually affecting the community in itself. So I just brought that attention to them and I signed them up.
And so as you were doing that, all of this other stuff was going on.
Yes,
the protests related to George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and all those other names. How did those protests affect you and what you were doing in terms of signing up, your colleagues?
You have different methods to approach a situation, and I like what's going with Generation X.
Or Generation Z, or the ones that are in now.
Yes. Yeah. So they're all in, and and I don't mind it 'cause I love that tenacity. I love that that ability to do something. But that energy has to be directed in more of a effective manner. You
Good
see,
point.
yes,
Good point.
and
Yeah.
that's what I stand on.
Good point. So, did prison affect you?
Yes.
And what I mean, in terms of you wanting to achieve, because it seems like most people when they get out of prison, they just end up doing more
Yes.
stuff that ends up putting them back in
Back in
prison.
there.
But you're making change.
Yes, ma'am. When I went to prison, I noticed that a lot of they say what we're, I would say we are people of habit, creatures of habit, I should say. And so if you used to being around a certain type of people, even wherever you go at Australia, Africa, Benin,
Right.
Egypt, you're gonna find those. You're gonna attract those same like minds because you don't feel comfortable being around nobody else. I never had that problem. I learned as much as I can from all types of people, whoever. And I realized that I was a good listener. They told me their story,
Wow.
and you know, I became that person that needed to make that change for the people that's been stripped away from them.
Now let me ask you this.
Yes, ma'am.
What's your opinion of how our now past president is accusing the electoral system of fraud? And he's even including the work that you guys
Yes, ma'am.
did, you
Yes.
know, and the money that
Yes.
y'all raised.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, what do you think about that, him saying that our electoral system is fraudulent and he would not even concede the election?
Yes. I would say there is something going on that the people on the outside is not aware of.
What do you mean?
I would say a lot of political things. Because I feel like that would have been either way. Either if Trump would have stayed in office, it would have still been electoral. We know Florida's a swing state, and it's notorious for stuff going up missing. You see in South Carolina, it's like 60,000 ballots that's unaccounted for. They had one case in Florida where the guy he had registered his dead wife to vote, and so it's like for stuff like that to get through the system, then it makes me a little weary and like something's going on. Something's going on. I may not know what's going on, but something's going on.
And so tell us about the process when you registered to vote.
Oh.
So what, and you actually
Yeah,
went.
yeah. I went. Then I signed up. I did a mail-in ballot.
Oh.
But because I was just like, once I became a field organizer, it's a lot of work. And you know, you got people. You meet so many people in the field. People want to call you with information. You be signing up people that have fines and fees. It was so much energy you had to put into it, and it's like literally, I was very exhausted, it's very draining.
It was a
So
lot.
like, yeah, it's a lot all day, every day, and I just it's really got to the point I wanted to sign up as many people as I can because your voice matters, even when you don't think it don't matter. It matters because it matters to the generation that's come after you.
That's true.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, tell me what you think about the term returning citizens.
Oh,
Do you prefer that over ex-felons? I'm just curious.
very. I feel like it could get better because I went to prison because I broke the Constitution, and according to Amendment 14,
You broke the Constitution. Oh, you killed someone.
No,
Oh.
you violated the Constitution, which was one of the pieces of paper that this country was established on. And once you're subject to that. Once you break that or you violate that, you're subject to free labor. This is Amendment 14, and the sister Ava DuVernay, she made a whole movie, a whole documentary about this. And okay, I served my time, but yet here I am still being somewhat ostracized and demonized for this same crime that was committed, and I served time for it, regardless of the term or what you calling it, or the fines and fees. Like you have people that did 20 years and they still got to pay fines and fees. That's absurd. You know, I could barely find a good job, and you got this guy paying fines and fees for a crime that was committed 20 years ago.
But what about somebody who committed a crime, say, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Should they have to pay
No,
those fees?
Personally, I feel like no, because you served your time, and you already go to prison. You doing free labor, everything. You're not getting paid for none of the work you doing there, and so it's like that got to account for something. And yet you get out, and you know you still being you still being disenfranchised.
Yeah.
So you know
Yeah.
it's an uphill battle, and I'm ready for it.
You know, and God bless you. And on that note, we're just about to end our session. So
Yes.
Robert Edwards, activist, ex-felon, who voted for the first time
Yes,
this
ma'am.
year.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for joining us on Coco Chats.
Yes, ma'am.
And if anybody wants to reach you, how can they do that?
You can reach me. You can call my phone. I'm so 561-763-6410. Yeah, I do a lot of school events. I speak to the youth constantly.
Really?
Yes, because when I see them out there, I see myself. So
In what sense?
Lack of direction and hands on. It's such a gap between the older generation and young generation. The older generation blaming the youth generation, the new generation blaming the old generation scared of it. But we have to have more patience and more time and more understanding with our people in order to achieve the goals that we want for the next generation. Because soon these same youth that we see out there, they're gonna have a generation that come after them. So it's just an uphill battle, but we just gotta stick to it.
Have you been committing any crimes?
No, ma'am, that's over with. No, that'll never happen again. It's no need for it. Like when I became big just on being financially able, and I studied a lot when I was in prison, so I took that same mindset and carried it over for when I got out. So that's definitely over with. Never again.